Hello and welcome to the Pursuing Excellence podcast. My name is Stephanie Hajar, and today we have a very special guest. We have Eddie Ramos on the show today. Eddie is an actor based in Los Angeles. He started acting at 9 years old in New York City, and he graduated from Syracuse University with a BFA in 2013. He's also the founder of The Modern Actor, an acting coach, and a backstage expert. So please welcome Eddie Ramos to the show. Eddie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. I do appreciate it, and I'm just super excited to chat with you and your community today.
Thank you. Me too. So, I would love for you to tell everybody. Well, actually, first of all, I want to know what is something that you want the audience to take away from our conversation today. Before we jump into who you are and what you do and all of that, what's something that you want the audience to take away?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think as we find ourselves, and I don't know when you're going to release this, but as we find ourselves in the holiday season, at the end of the year, I think the thing I'd want everyone to take away is that it's okay to take some rest time. It's okay to, uh, you know, take your foot off the gas just a tiny bit, and to kind of recoup, be with family, allow your mind to relax. I think it was definitely an intense year, and after 12 months, and I'll get into this, being an entrepreneur and an actor myself, like, especially if you're doing it solo entrepreneur like I am, it takes a toll after a while, and I think it's okay, and this wasn't always my mindset, but now, as I've been doing this for quite a while, I've just kind of started to give myself a little bit more grace in these holiday times. And I think it's just as the seasons kind of change, it's okay that, our internal state also reflects what we're seeing outside. So it's okay to kind of get quiet, get calm, regroup, and then get ready again to start, hard and strong in January. So I think that's what I would leave everyone with this today.
That's a great message.
Yeah.
You said something that sparked my interest, that you didn't always give yourself grace, but you've kind of learned to allow yourself to do that. How how did you become able or willing, or what made you want to allow yourself to accept that grace and to give yourself grace?
I think like one of the things that I do a lot, Stephanie, is I do a lot of tracking, and I track, obviously tracking things like workouts and books that I'm reading, but I also do a lot of tracking in terms of, my work efforts and tracking auditions and such. And so one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that I did was look at how my year kind of plays out. And if you notice, there are certain patterns in everyone's years where work seems to be a lot more active, and then work kind of slows down a little bit. So one of the things that I noticed was that I didn't need to go so hard every single month, and especially when things were slowing down in December, I didn't need to kind of like keep pushing, because naturally as we enter January, things would start picking up again. So I thought to myself, or after some time, I reminded myself that it's okay to also take that time for me.
Hmm.
Burnout is real. I've toyed with things called like conscious burnout, something that I kind of like coined in a way where it's like I'm gonna burn out consciously. Like I want to push myself. I want to
Mm.
come to, do as much as I can until failure. And I think when you're consciously burning out, it's cool because you can also regulate the amount of stress and the amount of effort that you're putting into things. But I think when it's unconscious and you're just depleted by the end of the year or depleted by the end of the week, I don't think that's very healthy.
Mhm.
So I guess I just kind of shifted my mindset and wanted to prioritize my health, prioritize my mental health, and also give myself more time to kind of not necessarily content batch, but almost batch my energy. So like even here at my own home right now, and just kind of in my mind right now for work, 2025 is a couple weeks away, and I'm starting to sort of gear towards that rather than kind of push myself for the last few weeks of 2024, if that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's great. Um, when you're tracking things, well, where did that come from? Is that something you've always done, or is that like a conscious effort and an idea that you had somewhat recently?
You know what? It honestly, it came from probably coming out to LA and becoming an actor out here,
Mhm.
where things felt so just more spontaneous and I not so stable. I felt like I am just someone that needs to see things kind of on a graph and
Mhm.
it's funny because I'm not necessarily like a mathematical person. I wouldn't describe myself as someone who like thinks in that way,
Mhm.
but I think being an actor, there is a sense of like you're kind of just kind of spinning at times in this universe of the industry and
Mhm.
I think like being able to kind of like grab hold of something, that being like a tracking system or a schedule or routine was really important for me to, again, just kind of like stay centered, stay grounded, and
Mhm.
keep persevering through it too. So I didn't feel like I was spinning. I felt like I was in the driver's seat, if not at least in the passenger seat of what was happening in my career
Yeah.
or like out here. And what started analog very much so, like in a notebook, has now kind of shifted to apps that I provide some of my students. There's something I use called Inbox Hollywood, where it's tracking auditions. I track the books I read. I got this little Garmin, so I track those kind of things. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I love the science of kind of self exploration and kind of like putting some data behind the results, I guess, and sometimes that's a fool's errand, especially in something like acting where there is a little bit of luck and a little bit of
Sure.
je ne sais quoi going on. But
Uh-huh.
as much as we can, I try to track things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the things that you're talking about kind of remind me of the idea of pursuing excellence. So
Mm.
just from your perspective, and that's what I see, but from your perspective, how do you pursue excellence? And first of all, what comes to mind when you hear the words pursuing excellence?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that definitely triggers a past where excellence wasn't always at the top of my mind or the top of the list of things that I was trying to go for. And I guess I wouldn't have described it as excellence. So, in high school or in school, I wasn't a bad student, but I certainly wasn't at the top of my class, excellently scoring A pluses around the board, right? I mean, I was, B pluses, A's, B's. It wasn't something
Mhm.
that I was consciously pursuing. And so in my exploration of that conversation or that topic, I realized that excellence for me is probably tied around something I'm very passionate about. So wasn't necessarily passionate about science or history class or English. I was very passionate, however, about my acting career. And so if
Mhm.
I've achieved any excellence in that, it's most likely come from a passion behind it. So excellence for me is or pursuing excellence definitely has some layer of passion built into that. Um, I think the other thing when I think about pursuing excellence is that I'm not, again, consciously putting that at the forefront of my mind. So I'm trying to remove myself from the results of being excellent
Mhm.
and rather allowing myself to be more flexible. And so if excellence comes out of that, uh, then that's a great, result and it's a happy accident. But I don't try to zoom in on being excellent or all the time. I truly try to feel it out a little bit more, and I think again, coupled with that passion, then excellence can come once in a while in my craft. And that's the thing, where I'm not excellent at everything. I don't think anyone's excellent at everything they
Yeah.
do, right? Like, and I think like so much about what we do as actors, as entrepreneurs, is it's trial and error. It's mistakes, it's failures, and every once in a while you get a nugget of excellence in there. Every once in a while you found something that really hit. And
Mhm.
I think that's kind of been my mindset around excellence itself. And I'll share one last thing about
Please
excellence
do.
that I learned in high school as well. So back to when I was describing my high school years, we used to have these vocab quizzes in English class, and it was just part of the I was in 10th grade at the time. It was just part of our, I wouldn't say the word culture, but just like the energy around these vocab tests were that they weren't that important,
Mhm.
and the way that we all kind of, like, scored on the test was that we would essentially just cheat off each other. We would cheat
Mhm.
and you would have them written down on a piece of paper, and, although I'm a good actor, I'm a very bad liar, Stephanie, and
Mhm.
I'm a bad cheater, and I guess I'm a bad poker face, and so it was just on my face that day, and I the teacher had kinda spotted me and then singled me out, and it was, one of the biggest lessons and turning points in my life because he had me stand up, embarrassed me in front of the class, and it was a small class at a private school, and I was completely devastated and definitely shed a tear in front of everyone. And I just remember being like so rocked to my core about getting caught. Obviously, didn't want to be caught or known as as cheating.
Mhm.
Was threatened with suspension. It was real scary stuff, and it made me realize that instead of trying to cheat my way through these tests, what if I actually studied and
Mhm.
prepared for them? Hello, I'm an actor. I can memorize lines better than a lot of people. And will you know that when I was cheating on those tests, trying to fake my way through it, I would probably score around like 80s. And the minute I started preparing and memorizing and learning the vocabs, it was 90s and above. It was 96, hundreds. And that is something that really taught me about excellence there too. That
Wow.
excellence comes in preparation.
Mm.
And if you're trying to wing anything in life, yeah, sure, maybe once or twice that's gonna get you through. But I think if you wanna be excellent, preparing to be excellent, preparing for all different types of situations will allow you to have excellence more often than not. And when I've gotten my series regulars and guest star roles and anything that I've gotten now since being an adult has been from that preparation. I will never go back to the cheating or the shortcuts. It's just not worth it. And
It's
I've
true.
yeah, I felt the cake or the pie on my face, and I just don't want to go back to that. So that's how I pursue excellence, I guess.
That is awesome and
Yeah.
such a great illustration of that exactly and how preparation leads to excellence. I like how you said you're not trying to be excellent, but it
Mm.
sounds like you prepare and then that excellence comes in those nuggets or whatever form it comes in um, every once in a while or however often it comes. Um, can you tell us how you got into acting and what led you to want to pursue it as a full-time career or part-time career?
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite conversation topics. So, I got into acting very, very young, and I'm originally from New York City, Queens,
Mhm.
and I obviously being surrounded by Broadway, but I think just also growing up in the '90s, there was such a wealth of great, movies and movies that
Mhm.
starred children, right? So
Mhm.
it wasn't, like, far-fetched to see a kid headlining a movie, and I think, that was the age that I was at, and I just kind of started thinking to myself, like, what it would be like to be that kid on that movie, and I was always the kid too, Stephanie, that would like raise my hand for the plays, or if there was an English thing that we were doing or a performance, I was always volunteering. So it was just always inside of me to be some type of performer. I knew it was acting rather than like singing or dancing.
Mhm.
And my mom put me into an acting class off Broadway. From there, they were holding auditions for an off Broadway musical that I ended up booking. And so at 9, 10 years old, I was already off Broadway. I had my first off Broadway credit.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and we were doing like, 4 or 5 shows a week. I was doing at least 4 shows a weekend, you know what I mean? It was like already working as an actor, and I
Mhm.
was hooked. I was addicted. I loved it. It didn't feel at any point did I feel like this doesn't feel right to me.
Mhm.
And 2 things I guess about that. I always knew I wanted to be an actor, so it's been just everything that I've put all my energy towards since 9 years old. I mean, over 24 years worth and just been my entire world. And also knowing that it felt like a full body yes. So,
Mhm.
so from 9 years old, like I said, I just knew that this was something that I wanted to do. Um, Finding the way though, like, I knew I wanted to come out west, whatever that meant to my 9-year-old self, like, I don't know. So I didn't know exactly the steps, but because I kinda had the goal in mind,
Mhm.
I felt like I was always aligning myself to eventually make it out here, however that was gonna work itself out, and,
Mhm.
I ended up going to college for acting. I went to Syracuse, And they had a program in our senior year where 12 students were selected to come out to LA and meet managers and agents, casting directors, all from the Syracuse alumni base.
Cool.
And yeah, and so my first manager actually came from those meetings that week. I was one of I am the or was the only student to get a representation or a rep out of that week.
Wow,
And
good for you.
yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and again, wasn't planned. I knew that I wanted to be in LA.
Mhm.
So I would dress really nice to these meetings. I would try to do my best to, interact and quote unquote network with these people, individuals that are
Sure.
coming in. Um, and I was lucky enough to be offered representation, and so graduated in May and was out here in July, right after graduation, and have been here ever since. 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
What a great
yeah.
story. What was it about acting that that just really spoke to you at age 9? Like, what was it about being on that stage that you were like, "Okay, this is it?"
Yeah, I'm gonna be super honest. As a 9-year-old boy, you're going through so many emotions at home, and I think for me, what really drew me to acting was being able to play, being able to I was a kind of the class clown in class and not
Mhm.
necessarily in like a disruptive, like, malicious way, but I just always wanted to make people laugh. I always wanted to entertain, my friends and wanted to, fool around with the teachers, you know what I mean? So that was just something that like was innately in my personality, and acting gave me the true outlet to do so. So I
Mhm.
really wasn't disrupting anyone. And I think also what I meant before with, being a young kid was that you go through so many like emotions at home, and my dad was pretty strict, and we
Mhm.
had, curfews, and acting allowed me to really just like let it all out, and
Mhm.
whether I was really angry at my dad for something, or I was really emotional about a heartbreak that I had gone through or whatever, being that age and just finding acting in my teenage years allowed me to kind of like transmute those feelings from life into a character. And I could
Yeah.
hide behind the character oftentimes. Now, obviously, like I'm independent, and I can have whatever feeling or emotion I want at home. But definitely in the beginning, it was my only real escape to kind of really express myself, for lack of a better
Mhm.
word. Yeah.
Yeah. Does
Yeah.
it still feel like an escape or an outlet, or does it feel more like a job?
How funny that you say that. I wouldn't say it doesn't feel like an escape. I certainly, like I said, don't need to escape anymore.
Mhm.
It feels more like I'm going back internal. I almost feel like I'm going back and digging deeper now.
Mhm.
It feels like I get to explore feelings and emotions, more nuances, more subtle things, rather than just like getting to be angry or getting to be in
Yeah.
love, right? Like now I get to really explore these really kind of fascinating and really interesting emotions. That's what it feels more so now. And then in terms of a job, if you had asked me that 2 years ago, I probably would have said, yeah, like acting is super so much so a job. I think things changed after the pandemic for a lot of us, and that reset also allowed me to just kind of have a different relationship to acting. It
Mhm.
leveled the playing field. Everyone had to start from 0 again, from scratch, and I think I needed that. I think before the pandemic, everything was go, go, go. It was pilot seasons, and then you're going into these meetings, and it was
Mhm.
just so intense, and having that year to really reflect, to work on my business, to work on myself, my spiritual self, my physical health, like it allowed me to kind of now appreciate acting from a different perspective where yes, it is my job and it is my number one priority, but there's something that I do kind of to contextualize it a little bit more or compartmentalize it where it's not like destroying me or putting me through the ringer as much as it used to. Um,
Mhm.
and it's something that I just have so much fun doing. I look forward to the auditions when they pop up, and that wasn't always the case in my years here in LA. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. For people in entertainment or music or sports, we often want to be a part of these industries or to act or to sing or to dance or play a sport, whatever it is, because it is that outlet for us from a really young age, and we grow up and it is our thing, that's what we do. And kind of like what you described, it becomes so much our thing that it eventually can overcome us or overtake us, and then we almost associate ourselves as the thing. Like, I
Yeah.
am an actor and that's all I am, and if I'm doing well, then if I'm doing well in my career, then I'm doing well personally, and if I'm not, then I'm destroyed. Kind of like what you said. How have you separated yourself as Eddie Ramos, the man, brother, fiance, son, friend, whatever, from Eddie Ramos, the actor? Let's start there. How
Yeah.
have you separated yourself from the thing that you do?
I will say it definitely helps that the thing that I do, I really, really love
Mm-hmm.
and, uh, and it's really fun. So I think like I have just so much joy when I'm acting, when I'm on set, Stephanie, and for the actors or just performers or athletes, whoever's, listening here, like when you're doing the thing that you love doing, it like they say, it doesn't feel like work. And
Mm-hmm.
there's such a special feeling when I get to be on set and get to play with other actors and the cameras, 2 inches away from my face. I mean, I come alive.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said too, like I live a pretty simple life as Eddie Ramos, the man, the fiance, the son, the brother. I get so much fulfillment from those acting experiences that my life in general is, like I said, pretty simple. I love to read. I love to go hiking. I love to travel here and there with my fiance, with my friends, cooking. But it doesn't feel like, I think in my early 20s, I felt like I had to do so much to answer a question like that. Like on my downtime, I had to like fill
Mm-hmm.
in so many of these holes because acting was such a high. And when I would come down, I would need to like do something as magnificent or as intense, and now it doesn't feel like I need to like refill that hole so much. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, it's actually really nice to um kind of mirror that experience with the grounding, with like, as we enter the holiday seasons here, going back home and
Mm-hmm.
putting on the sun hat, gonna help my mom, clean out her garage, and
Nice.
just like, and just like reminding myself, yeah, like, yeah, I live in La La Land, I live in Hollywood, but like I'm still the same, New York kid at the end of the day. And I think
Yeah.
like I try my best to always go back to those roots.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It's just the experience that I've had. I know other actors who are, way ahead of me in their careers, and there is really no downtime, and I wonder how they kind of like find those moments. I just love to kind of go quiet. I love to kind of
Mm-hmm.
go internal. And I think, identity is so interesting, especially as an actor, because you are the person, but you're also the brand and the identity. And I know I've struggled with
Mm-hmm.
that on, social media, and what do I post for actor Eddie Ramos as opposed to what I really want to post or what the
Mm-hmm.
modern actor is going to post. I mean, that's been a fun juggle for me. I I don't stress about it as much as I used to. I used to
That's
stress
great.
a lot about it. And I again, it's through constant conversations. It was through tears, through stress, and eventually it, over time, I've sort of, found my way through it. But
Yeah.
it wasn't any like I don't do anything in particular to kind of like help myself define those identities. I just try to stay true to myself as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that help you to stay true to yourself? You mentioned just going back home, being connected to your roots. What are some of the other things that you do?
Yeah.
Lifestyle choices,
y- uh,
etc.
Yeah, no, again, I think a lot of the things I was saying is just like about like simplifying the life as much as I can.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and definitely not negating anything that Eddie wants from a personal standpoint. So I'm fascinated with learning Spanish, and although I can understand Spanish, I can't speak it as well as I'd like. So, learning that language is something that I just love to do, and it reminds me of my roots of hearing my grandfather speak in the kitchen, and my
Mhm.
mom and him kind of going at it, and just being in New York and as a Puerto Rican guy, like, so that's something that really like ties me back to who I am. I think teaching and coaching has been
Mhm.
one of the most fulfilling things that I was like, yes, I had the thought of starting this business, but I also like to think it was some sort of divine intervention and kind of coming together of this other side of my personality that I truly love. And you know, seeing another actor find their way through acting really brings me a lot of joy and fulfillment.
Mhm.
So giving back in that way has definitely helped with that. But then other things like I said, you know, LA is there's no shortage of nature, of going to the ocean, of hiking.
Yeah.
Running. I run a lot. I think building endurance as a runner can also be a metaphor for the endurance that it takes in this business. So
For sure.
yeah, like
For
I truly,
sure.
yeah, right. Like if you can push one more mile, I'll think to myself, that's the extra mile that the business might need. You know what I mean? Like, and I really try to like test myself or test my
Yeah.
cardio, so that I can feel like that I can do that in my business. But I guess those are the things that I would say to stay true. And the final thing that I think I mentioned to you on my podcast when you were a guest was that I keep a list of things in my car, like this little notebook. And anytime that
Mhm.
I feel like joy 10 or like close to just like being just so blissed out, I will write that down, like whatever that activity was or whatever I was doing, so that I could, you know, remind myself when I'm feeling down to kind of go back to that, if I need a pick me up. So those are the kind of things that I like to do.
Yeah, those are so good. So good.
Yeah.
Okay, vamos a continuar en español.
Oh my God.
If you're
Wow.
ready. I'm just kidding.
Oh my
I'm not prepared for that. Um,
I was like, let's go. All right. Vamos, let's do it. Jesus.
um, Eddie, I heard you tell a story about a guest speaker. I believe it was a guest speaker that you had in a class or something at Syracuse. And the guy asked everybody, okay, who wants to go to LA? Raise your hand if you want to be an actor in LA. And you raised your hand, and a bunch of other people did. And then he proceeded to tell a story about a guy that went out to LA ready to become an actor and sort of got sucked up in in the Hollywood stuff,
Mhm.
and essentially was like selling his soul and became addicted to drugs and just went down a bad path. And then afterwards he asked everybody, and correct me if I'm telling the story wrong, but it, from what I remember, he asked everybody again, okay, who wants to go to LA and become an actor? And you were like one of two, I think you said, that still raised your hand. What was it about, or what is it about you, or your values, or what you know about yourself, that hearing a story like that doesn't deter you, and you maybe could hear it and go, okay, well, I'm different, and I can stick it out, I can stick to my values, I won't sell my soul.
Yeah.
What is it about you, or what you know about yourself, that made you want to keep your hand up?
Yeah. A couple different things. And yeah, you got the story pretty much exactly right. Um and I think like my the way I grew up and my upbringing definitely prepared me to move to Los Angeles at such a young age, a prime age of 21. Obviously,
Mhm.
everything was shiny, you know, but I think that's just, I was lucky to not. Sometimes I wish I could have had the fun high school party X kind of like, you know, experience, but I didn't necessarily grow up like that, and so those kind of vices or those seductions of being in the
Mhm.
business wasn't ever going to be something that I was going to kind of like completely follow down those paths. So when he talked about, you know, this kid getting on drugs and all this stuff, like it just was not part of my story. It was not part of
Mhm.
my DNA, and I just truly did not believe that that was going to be something that and again, it could have totally happened, but there was something guiding me. And I think I hearken that back to my family. I was really super lucky that both my parents supported what I was doing, supported my acting career all my life, and supported me moving to LA.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm extremely close to my parents, close to my mom. And so it was weekly conversations, if not daily, on the phone. You know what I mean? So like I
Mhm.
had this real tight knit group that was gonna be behind me and gonna be watching my steps, and not necessarily like in a like a domineering kind of way, but certainly like a guiding light kind of way, you know, like,
Sure.
hey, let's think about it this way. And again, I just wasn't that kind of kid that would take those big chances or, you know, kind of go down those scary routes so much.
Mhm.
And I've talked about this too. Like, part of me, continuing to raise my hand was also that beautiful naivete that young people have that tells them, listen, I haven't had my heart broken yet. I haven't heard the no too many times. So yeah, you telling me this scary story, it's just, again, not in my narrative. The yellow brick road is clear for me, and I can see the path. And so I think part of that was going in my head. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Like, it's
Mm.
just been green lights this whole time. Hence even the book, the book, Matthew McConaughey, Green Lights, right?
Uh-huh.
I had that same experience. It was go. It was Eddie, go, do it. The story that I shared about getting the management company, like,
Mhm.
again, I am so grateful and super lucky, but it was those kind of things that were happening in my life that would be like, why wouldn't I not do this? Everything is
Yeah.
pointing in this direction. So I
Mhm.
just had this unwavering belief in myself. I had this unwavering belief in my dreams. And then the final thing too, I was in a pretty bad car accident in junior year of college,
Mm.
and, like, so much so the car was totaled. I mean, it
Wow.
could have been fatal. It was very,
Oh my
very
gosh.
scary. Yeah. And I just remember, like, if you've spoken to anybody who has, like, a near-death experience, they kind of have this moment of calm, and I did have a moment as we were spinning out so scary in the car where I was like, "Is this how I'm gonna go?" And I just
Mhm.
asked that quickly, and I felt calm at that moment, and, thank God I wasn't, obviously, my time.
Mhm.
And after that, I had just refound my faith in God, and I'm Catholic, and I think also having a strong spiritual practice, there was a moment where I was really into Buddhism and studying a lot about that, but I've, just always stuck close to some higher power. And
Mhm.
if I am ever feeling kind of out of control, I mean, I pray daily, but it's just something that has always been kind of, again, that, like, through line, or that kind of, force that's kind of pulled me, and always tried to I'm always asking myself, like, how can I be the best I can be? Teach me to
Mhm.
do right, like, please pull me in the right direction, So,
Mhm.
I think that's also been the thing that's been keeping me safe, and not falling down that LA path. And, not everyone goes through that. And I think that was another thing.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, you're telling this one story, but that's not everyone's story. And I feel like the fear mongering that he was trying to do was just, like, so unnecessary. And
Mhm. And
yeah,
clearly ineffective
yeah, and clearly ineffective. Yeah, for me, and at least the other
for
student
you.
who,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And, yeah, and that story has always stuck with me, and I share that story, on conversations like this, and to my students as well. It is certainly something to keep an eye out for sure,
Mhm.
but I don't think that you can live in fear in this business. I don't, and especially something like that. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, um, there's so many reasons why you shouldn't pursue acting, or shouldn't pursue your dreams, and that wasn't one of them that was gonna keep me from that. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
powerful. That's
yeah,
really powerful.
yeah.
How has your faith informed your decisions regarding your career or your approach to your career, especially when it comes to, I mean, acting is it's unlike other careers where you can do all the things right and you still might not get the
Mhm.
job, or maybe you just it seems like a fluke and you get a job, you get a role that you didn't expect to get.
Yeah.
How does your faith inform the way that you see success and the way that you pursue your career, whereas maybe that one guy that did all the drugs or whatever was like thinking that's, success at all costs, like no matter what,
Mm.
I'm just going to do whatever it takes to reach that level of success, whatever it is. How does your faith inform your decisions and your view of success?
I think, just by definition, faith is the unwavering belief in something that you can't even see.
Mm,
And I think having that affirmation, or that mantra, running through my head, or my brain, or my heart constantly, has enabled me to stick it out in this kind of business, where like we talked about earlier, it's like you don't necessarily see the finish line. You don't necessarily even see the path. Um, but something is pulling you in that direction. Something is guiding you along. And so that has been my spiritual practice, has been the conversation that I can always lean back on or rely on when I'm feeling lost,
Mhm.
when I'm feeling like, the ego wants to step in and muscle his way through something or power its
Mhm.
way through. And I have to remind myself that, and again, other people have different beliefs on this. I just truly believe that nothing that I've achieved has been achieved alone. And
Mhm.
not only from a spiritual, like God was there, but my family was there, my mom was there, my fiance was there, friends like you were there. You know what I mean? Like it's just I've just always had that kind of mentality around things. Like there's no way that Eddie Ramos, this guy, Puerto Rican dude from Queens, New York, has just figured out the way, and like I don't know, I just didn't grow up with that kind of teaching and or that belief. And so that's really, faith has always been the thing that I've like gone to, and 1000% can add to the mixture of any excellence that I've achieved. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
for me, for Eddie Ramos personally, yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of on the flip side of that,
Mhm.
and on the flip side of success and achievement and all of that stuff, there's a lot of rejection
Mm,
in acting and a lot of no's that most actors or most performers of any kind hear before they hear a yes. And even in between their yeses and their roles and their gigs that they're able to book, there's a lot of no's and a lot of rejection.
mm.
How specifically do you deal with rejection, and how do you keep yourself going? What keeps you going?
Yeah. So rejection is something like, it's a topic that gets talked to you from the very first day at acting school. So
Mhm.
it's a concept that I'm not unfamiliar with. It's also just something that all of us deal with on if you've ever been rejected from a sports team, rejected by someone you liked. I mean, it's something that, like, I think all of us have experienced. If you if you haven't, you're so lucky. But I think it's something that, like, we're taught or exposed to very early.
Mhm.
Now, actors have a really interesting relationship with rejection because it's something that uh we experience weekly,
Mhm.
and it's something that we willingly put ourselves into. So
You guys are
reject
crazy.
we're insane. And what's so funny is because I think rejection is so much it's a juxtaposing, contradictory, hypocritical thing that actors deal with, because here we are supposed to feel everything and want to be, the people pleaser or the entertainers, yet the flip side of the business is being rejected, being told no,
Mhm.
and also having to learn how to detach yourself from those feelings of rejection.
Mhm.
So my training tells me to feel everything, but the business tells me, like, I can't feel everything. I can't take everything personally. Stephanie, the amount of therapy that I've had to go through to, like, talk about this, you understand? Like, I mean,
I'm
it's so
sure.
difficult to deal with, right? Like, it's so hard to kind of, like, understand as an actor. I mean, like you said, you have to be crazy to go for it. So I think definitely, like, that is a practice that actors have, innately. If not, they work on and build on.
Mhm.
Specifically, what does Eddie do when he feels rejected? So, like, if there's been a role that I was, like, really, really gung ho on it and just put everything, all my efforts in, I will immediately go to that list. Well, before that, I definitely feel my feelings. So, like,
Mhm.
I give my time to be, angry. I give my time to cry if I need to.
It's
But
good.
yeah, I give myself the 24 hours. I'm not someone that, like, sulks for too long, because what I do right after is I do something to prove my worth to myself. So it's not that my worth only comes from being validated from a role, but my worth comes from things that I can go after in my own life. And so most of the time it'll come from a really hard, vigorous run where it's like, you know what, Eddie, you did 5 miles last week. Let's push it and show yourself that you can prove to go to 7, or go for the
Mm.
full 10, go for a 4-hour hike and still come down ready to go for more. Like, it's those kind of things, or finish that book or finish that script. It's those kind of things that I use to offset the feeling of feeling rejected. And then I think what I would always encourage anybody listening to do is go out and make your own luck, or make your own, if the opposite of rejection is acceptance, like make something that feels like you've accepted yourself or someone's accepted you, which means like go for another audition, do a play, do a table read for a friend, um, other ways to stay creatively inspired or motivated,
Mhm.
so that way that doesn't just kind of decimate you, that rejection. So those are the kind of things that I like to do. And it's so funny, like the minute that you're out in nature, for example, there's a feeling of awe. There's a feeling of, like we talked about, this, God or spirituality or whatever have you, the universe. And it makes that feel so small. It makes that rejection as tiny as it really honestly should be. And you're just filled with love and filled with joy. And I personally, that's the kind of feeling that I'm going to stick with after that, and I kind of
Yeah.
learn to like let that go.
Yeah,
But it is an ongoing practice.
for
Definitely an
sure.
ongoing practice.
For
Yeah.
sure. For anybody, but especially for actors, it has to be an ongoing practice because we're never going to get everything that we want just in life in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. That's really good. Um, you've mentioned the modern actor and coaching and helping other actors. So, what is the modern actor, and how did it come about?
Yeah, I love talking about this too. So, in 2015, The Modern Actor was a lowly blog on the internet. And when I moved out here in 2013, I just knew that, like I was mentioning, tracking auditions, I also wanted to start tracking like what was working in the room.
Mhm.
I wanted to track some of the networking things that I was going to. I wanted to track some of the conversations I was having. And the best way to do that was to start writing. And it first started like a journal, and I just was kind of moved to write on the computer, and I started the Squarespace site. And so it was just me just talking about what I was going through, but it had some format. It wasn't just like a blog of my emotions. It had bullet points. It was, very early on of those listicles, 5 ways to achieve a great callback, so I had
Mhm.
already started with that in mind. And from there, I don't know how long it took, but I got a DM, or I got a message or a comment or an email from someone asking me if I would coach them. And this wasn't the first time that I had someone approach me to kind of teach them. While I was writing, while I was gaining experience in LA, booking projects, I had old friends, colleagues from, coming out of high school, and other people that I didn't even know in college ask me, "Hey man, how are you, I see you're having some success out there. Would you mind coaching me?" So the seed was planted very early on, but as you probably discussed so much in your work, I felt imposter syndrome. I felt
Mm.
like there's no Oscars on my wall. I don't have I don't have the house in the hills. I don't have all these things. So how can I give? What do I have to give? So I
Mhm.
battled with it for such a long time. But again, the knock on the door kept coming after me, and I finally leaned in, and was I gave my first lesson, and was extremely, like, again, nervous, but also super excited about what I could do with coaching, and where I could take the business. And it also came from a feeling of like, out here in LA, a lot of the acting classes are group sessions. I really felt as an actor myself that I wanted to talk with someone one on one. I wanted someone to sit
Mhm.
down with me and understand where I was coming from, both, yes, technically, but also emotionally and spiritually, and what was going on in my life that was informing why I felt like I couldn't have any confidence in front of the screen, right? Because it all plays
Mhm.
into itself. So that then got me to start the full time acting coaching. And from day one, it's always been virtual, one-on-one acting coaching. So it's very much one-on-one mentorship. And I work with beginner actors all the way to seasoned actors with series regs and guest stars on their resume. And I love working with beginners
Wow.
who've never touched a script, who are so afraid of stepping onto a stage. And so it challenges me in so many ways, but it's all about the person. It's all about custom tailoring that class to the individual student. And now about 4 or 5 years later, really got to get in the business going at that point. I've coached myself personally over 350 students.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
It's
been
incredible.
really, really rewarding, very fun. And we talk about everything about, things like getting your first headshots, revamping your demo reel, all the way to conversations about how to, land your first agent, how to maybe jump to another agency. I mean, we talk both the technical, the craft, we talk mindset, and we talk business. So it's the holistic approach around acting.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
wonderful.
yeah. So that's the modern actor coaching, and there's a little podcast, and the blog is still alive, and but the coaching has been the thing that I've really put all my effort into the last few years.
Good for you.
Yeah.
It's so incredible because so many people come out to LA, or maybe they're not even in LA yet, but they want to be an actor and they just have no idea where to start.
Yeah.
And that's got to be, I don't know if it's half the battle, but it's a huge part of the battle is just figuring out, what do I even do? How do I even get my foot in the door?
Yeah.
If you're unfamiliar with the industry, it's like it's a guessing game.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I that was also one of the reasons why I started doing it, is because I got scammed when I was 9. So like when my mom put me in that acting class, we
Mhm.
also started just looking for agents online. And of course, my mom knew nothing. I mean, this is
Right.
early 2000s, so the internet's obviously not as skilled and as perfect as it is now. So looking up reviews wasn't really a thing. And I signed up for some quote unquote agent, and of course, they never sent me out for any auditions, but they
Of
kept taking my
course.
monthly payments, right? Like,
Mm.
and one of the things that I vowed to do was to stop, the next family from getting scammed, or, and so that's also been part of my mission, is because it's also part of my story. And I
Yeah.
do wish, like you said, someone had been able to give us some guidance, all those years ago. And I've been lucky to work with young kids. I mostly stick with people 18 and over, but it's
Okay.
people like in that very same situation. Like, I live in Minnesota, I live in Indiana. Is acting even an option for me? And you'd
Mhm.
be surprised. Yes. And but I think when you're not in LA or New York, you think like you're never going to be able to pursue a career like that.
Mhm.
And with our conversations, with just understanding how the business works, you realize, oh, there was auditions held down the block for me, right? And like, so
It's cool.
I love seeing the joy on people's faces when they realize it's still a possibility. And yeah, but it all came from me getting scammed as a kid too back in the day. So
Jeez.
yeah,
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 unfortunately, I think that's a pretty common occurrence.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, for the last few questions that I have, I kinda want it to be like a rapid fire, but not
Ooh,
too rapid, so
okay,
if you have an answer that's longer than a sentence, that's totally okay.
sure.
Um, so for the first question, I would love to know, if somebody's listening and maybe they are that person in Indiana or Minnesota or wherever, and they want to pursue acting, or they at least just think that it sounds interesting and they might wanna do it. What are the top 3 lessons or 3 keys that you would wanna give this person? 3 things that they should know before they pursue a career in acting?
So the first thing I would say is take a class, um, either in person or a virtual class like mine. And what that will do is that'll, again, will be able to answer some of these questions you might be having. I think a lot of what I've learned with my students is that a lot of people spin their wheels for so long, and that can sometimes just completely kind of take them off the path altogether. And so
Mhm.
you want to be able to stop yourself before that obviously happens. So jumping into a class, getting to ask, the kind of FAQ questions that you might be having would be really, really helpful. The
Mhm.
second thing I would say is very much like I did when I was 9 years old. Jump into a local play or go to do a short film. It is one of the real fun, like, it's a low barrier to entry, but it's
Mhm.
one of those things that so many people come out of those experiences being like, "You know what? I don't think that's for me. I thought it was. I think I just like enjoying movies. I thought I was gonna be in front of the screen, and I realized, no, waiting 8 hours in my trailer, or, going every single day to rehearsal was a great idea, but not something that I really want to pursue." So like
Uh-huh.
those are the kind of things that I would do right away. Obviously, then, moving after that, now you can get into the business stuff, like getting your first headshots,
Mhm.
memorizing a monologue. Like now you can get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of what it is to be an actor and some of those things like building a portfolio. But those first two things I think are crucial when you're starting to think about acting as a career.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great, great advice. Finish this sentence. Acting is
Fun, rewarding, awe-inspiring.
great, great. um, can you give a quick behind the scenes look into what it's like to grow your skills as an actor? What do you do in your downtime as an actor? How do you continue to learn? What does that look like? Because people see what's in front of the camera and
Yeah.
that's all they see. What's behind the scenes, excuse me, that people might not know about?
This is probably something that would really intrigue a lot of people. It's researching. I think actors are some of the smartest people in the world, and it's due to the nature of the job. When you're playing a character, quote unquote, you're learning about someone completely different, oftentimes from a different place than you, a different time era. And so I think what I'm doing constantly is trying to learn. And that can be anything from having the History Channel on in the background, reading a book that I completely wouldn't have picked up otherwise. Also learning skills constantly. Like I said, learning language, learning instruments, but also doing some really like obscure things too, like, pen flipping and handstands and headstands. And so you're exploring both your mind and your body as an actor. And I think like,
Mm,
because this is the instrument, right? So a
right.
lot of time is spent just kind of working the instrument as best as you can, so that when you are on set, you're able to access those facilities a lot quicker, or when they need them to be accessed. So because there is a lot of downtime. I've calculated in my time, actors work maybe like 8% of the year, and 92% is spent just waiting for the next audition or waiting for the next role, right? Like it's a lot of time just exploring yourself, I would say,
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Um, you've mentioned exploring yourself. You've mentioned how acting sort of demands that you feel all the
Mhm.
things, every feeling, because it is so mentally demanding and emotionally demanding as well. How do you turn on and turn off, or do you not?
I absolutely do. And it's something that, again, I can like beat myself up about, but being on set for 14 hours, for example, I was just in Chicago and I booked a guest star for Chicago Med. And
Mm,
actually, you know, uh, traveling, going out there, that's all easy. Once you're on set and, there's not really like you can go anywhere else, like you are locked in. So,
right.
having the stamina and endurance to do that, it's something that I practice. Like I was talking about running, I practice that as much as I can all throughout the year. But even with all that practice, like doing the thing still takes so much out of you. That's why when people tell me that they want to be series regulars, like, yeah, it'd be nice to be on a billboard, but like you don't know how much work goes on behind the scenes of
Yeah, it's a
maintaining
lot.
that level, right? That level of energy is exhausting. And so what I'll do often, so after Chicago Med, I filmed for 2 days. I was actually like coming up with like a tiny little cold. I wasn't feeling great,
Mhm.
and I just shut off for the next week. I took a minute to answer emails. I took a minute to kind of get on the phone again, and I just do everything I need to kind of like recharge my battery. And I am not shy about that. Like I will literally go off the grid. I am on a mountain, unavailable. I'll come back to you when I'm back, and
That's great.
yeah, like honor that. Like I do not fret anymore about like, oh, I gotta be there. No, no, no.
Mhm.
So that's most of the things that I will do. I will honor that kind of time to myself for sure.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You mentioned recharging. What are some of your favorite ways to recharge or to just make sure that your battery doesn't get totally depleted?
So, like, funnily enough, like, I'm not necessarily a couch potato. So, maybe from the stories that I've already been telling. So, my recharge is something around activity. So, like,
Okay,
I'm recharging kind of like an electric battery. I have to like recharge by doing something.
it's
So, like,
great.
Yeah, like, so I'm playing a sport, I'm running, I'm walking through a city. So, after we finished filming Chicago Med, I had some extra days out in Chicago. I'd never been out there. So I'm now at the museums, exploring the city, going on bike rides. Like,
Cool.
that helps Eddie recharge.
Yeah.
I'm not like just sitting at home watching like 6 movies or binging Netflix. Like,
Mhm.
like I need to be out and about, and that immediately like gets me back. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds fun. You sound like a very kinesthetic person.
I think maybe I am.
A
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think
movement, a lot of
yeah.
tactile. Yeah. Do you learn that way too? Like, when
Uh,
you're learning a script, do you have to say the lines out loud, or can you just read it and memorize?
if I, obviously just like having that ability to memorize reading, yes, I can do that. I absolutely do that. But I am someone that prints their sides. I'm someone who wrinkles up his sides. I'm like trying to absorb it through my hands. So you're kind of tagging me perfectly. When I'm on set, for example, I will touch the set. I'm touching the props. I'm touching
Mm,
the chair. I want to understand the environment like I would in my own space. So like I'm not nervous to touch anything. I want to feel if that pole is cold or hot, if we're outside, I'm grabbing some dirt, I'm running it through my hands. Yeah. So yeah, I think you called that perfectly. Wow, that was good. Yeah.
I'll tell you my secret and how I could figure that out later.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I need to know.
but for now, I'll just ask you the next question.
Okay, sure. It was too
What has
good.
been
Scarily good.
it's in the language. It's
Oh,
in the
gotcha.
words that you use. It's
Oh,
easy.
gotcha.
I'll teach you
Okay.
later.
All right.
Anyway, what has been the greatest challenge so far in your career?
Mm. That's a good one. Greatest challenge. Oof. To get a little bit deeper with you guys, why not? I think the greatest challenge is battling the moments when you have expectations and the expectations are just deafening. And like we said, they don't come true, or they don't
Mm,
manifest themselves. And how do you um find yourself again after those? So yeah, like in the things that I've been telling you, it's because it's a practice that I've gone through, and it's come from my greatest challenges.
mhm,
um in the beginning of your career, when you're first getting out here, there's a phenomenon that happens here in LA, and it's something that they've tried to like kind of study and make it more well known, but it's this thing about like the shiny object syndrome. And
mhm,
first 2 years of every actor's career, they kind of like went off someone's, these IMDb accounts, these researchers, and they realized that in the first 2 years of most actors' careers, they'll see a huge spike in the amount of work that they're in. And that was around at the 2 year mark is when I booked my series regular role.
mm,
And I think when you reach such heights, the challenge is, how do you feel okay if you're not at that same level, and how do you navigate the rest of your journey and the rest of your
mhm,
experience? And so I think, yeah, like it's inherently, I think a lot of actors challenge is exactly what the kind of conversation we're having today is about, that identity and about finding your way through, and not identifying yourself with the successes of your jobs, and hence the work that I've done on that. But I would say that's probably the biggest challenge, is like, you know, thinking of yourself as something else in your mind, and having to, I guess, negotiate that
mm,
relationship. What is in the present. So that's
yeah,
been the biggest challenge, I guess.
yeah. I would imagine that faith can help
Yeah.
navigate that challenge
Yep.
in a way that many other things can't.
And you know, with that last thing about faith, Stephanie, it's one of those things that like oftentimes we put on the back burner, and it was like, no, like why would I not go back to that? And it always is the thing that gets me out of those places, and we just forget it. You're like, no, I think it's going on a roller coaster. I think it's eating Thai food. No, it's like, go back to your faith, man, and like, and it does snap you out of it.
So
Yeah,
true. So
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Okay, one of the last couple of questions.
Sure.
Aside from the greatest challenge, what has been the greatest lesson that you've learned?
The greatest lesson I've learned in acting. Ooh, this was something huge I learned in college.
Okay.
And this is something I've tried to talk to my own students about. So quick story is that when you're in college, you're no longer, as we all talk about, you're no longer the best actor, right? In high school, you were the best actor in your class. Now, when you're in an acting school or in college, everyone's the best actor. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to negotiate your identity or where you fit in the group, or, and I'm someone that will oftentimes kind of fall to the back of the group just out of protecting myself and just
Mm-hmm.
not feeling like I need the spotlight too much. Uh, and what happens is obviously certain actors get more of the light and more of the shine, and the teachers take notice too. So one of the greatest lessons I learned was I had a teacher one time tell me after I was doing a monologue, and he could tell that I was phoning it in. It was schmacky. It was bad. And he just basically asked me, he's like, Eddie, where are you from? And I like took a second to answer. And I was just like, yeah, I'm from Queens, New York. He was like, then act like you're from Queens, New York. And it wasn't like I needed to put on like an accent, like I didn't need to put like a Yankee hat and act more New York. But what I heard him say to me was be yourself, was
Mm.
honor you, man. Like stop trying to be this other
That's
actor that
good.
you think is being successful for whatever reason, your own insecurities. Like go back to who you are. And that
Mm-hmm.
has never left me. And it's been part of my success here in LA is being exactly who I'm from, who I am, where I'm from, my everything. That is the greatest lesson, and I try to teach my students all the time. It's like, yes, it's cliche to hear be yourself, but it is so important in this business to be yourself.
So true.
It's like one of the most important things. Like, yeah, talent and being a great actor, but also like knowing who you are is really important too.
It
You know?
really
Yeah,
is. It
yeah.
really is. There's a quote that I love by Dr. Maxwell Maltz,
Mm.
and anyway, I'll just tell you the quote. He says, seeking to be somebody is universal, but a mistake when we seek it in conformity. And I think that's just like one of the best ways to basically put what you just said into like one sentence is like it's just not worth it. It's just
Yeah.
not worth it. Are you from Queens, New York? Then act like you're from Queens, New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Eddie, last question for you. How can people find you? How can we support you? Maybe more
Totally.
importantly.
Yeah, sure, sure. So I'm on all the socials. And for the modern actor, if you guys are interested, if anyone who's listening is interested in hearing more about that story, or we do free consultation calls. So if you want to actually, get on the phone and talk to me personally, you can head over to themodernactor.com. And that's where all the information about classes and coaching would be. If you want to follow the modern actor, every week I'm posting some information about either being an actor in the business or just kind of the acting career in general, or something about craft. That's at the modern actor _. That's on Instagram. And if you want to follow my personal journey, I'm still a working actor. And so if you want to follow the things that I'm going through, and, gonna get married in September, hopefully, and you want to see all the behind the scenes of that.
Congrats.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
exciting.
Thank you. Yes, I'm extremely excited. And that's at actor Eddie Ramos. So that you can just
Awesome.
follow me there. And then, we have I'm starting a YouTube channel, or being a little bit more serious about it. And that's at the modern actor there too. So that's probably the best
Awesome.
ways to kind of follow along. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll put all of those links into the notes
Awesome.
down below. So, Eddie, thank you so much for doing this, for being here. Thank you
Mhm.
for the work that you do. Thank you for being willing to share your story and your experiences. It means a lot, and I'm super grateful for it. And I'm sure the people watching will be grateful for it too. So, thank you so much. And best wishes as we start the next year coming up and all the things that are to come.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. This was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Thank you.